Greetings, History 141 students. Dr. Fia here with the Founding Fathers. As usual, Megan Piet behind the camera, our trusty producer. You don't realize this, but we've been having a hard time getting this one off the ground. This is actually my fourth take for this episode of the Virtual Office Hours. As far as class goes, not many more lectures left. We have started now discussing this critical decade of the 1850s. Leading up to the Civil War. This is often a very tricky decade to teach historically, because we all know that in 1861 the Civil War is going to happen, but we're trying to sort of understand the world of the 1850s in its own context, in its own time. People weren't walking around the street in 1851 saying, we're Civil War in 10 more years. So it's, in one sense, we're looking at the causes of the Civil War. On the other sense, we're doing our best to try to understand these big debates over slavery, especially, and the spread of slavery in the context of the 1850s as the people of the time would have understood them. We started off the 1850s, of course, with this significant event known as the Compromise of 1850. It was in that moment when the Congress finally came up with a solution for what to do with the new territory that they've obtained from the Mexican-American War. Look over what that compromise was all about. California comes in free. Texas gets paid reparations. The influence of the Fugitive Slave Act, of course, is going to be very, very important. And then, of course, the introduction of this idea of popular sovereignty to decide the question as to whether or not states would come in slave or free. And, of course, Stephen Douglas emerges as the hero, the Illinois senator. He emerges as the hero in the wake of the Compromise of 1850 and will really become one of the most prominent politicians in America for this entire decade. So the Compromise of 1850 at least settles this question about the expansion of slavery temporarily. It's not until 4 years later that sort of all hell is going to break loose when Stephen Douglas proposes the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which will take all of that territory above the 3630 parallel line that, remember, was established during the Missouri Compromise in 1820. All of that land in the Louisiana Territory, which was supposed to be open as free states, are now, as a result of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, going to be open to popular sovereignty. Nebraska, everyone knows, is sort of going to come in free. It's largely free soilers who settle in Nebraska. But then you have this Kansas is up for grabs. And we talked about bleeding Kansas and how the sort of almost mini Civil War going on in Kansas raises all kinds of questions, especially among the South, about the validity of popular sovereignty. Eventually, Kansas does come in as a free state. The Republican Party, this fusion politics in which the Whigs, some Northern Democrats, and a bunch of third-party anti-slavery parties come together in 1856 and form the Republican Party. So now think about the political landscape in the mid-1850s. You have Northern Democrats led by Stephen Douglas, who are still very much wedded to this idea of popular sovereignty, let the people decide. You have Southern Democrats who are the strongest promoters of the expansion of slavery, because they believe that if you take your slaves, you can take your slaves with them wherever you go. You have that democratic right. And now you have the Republican Party, which is largely a party with the primary platform of trying to end the spread of slavery in the United States. So again, things start to heat up with the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Many of the Republicans, or the Whigs, and then later the Republicans, very, very upset about the fact that the Kansas-Nebraska Act overturns the Missouri Compromise and now opens up that northern Louisiana territory to slavery. In the next lecture, we're going to pick up the story as it goes into the second half of the 1850s, all the way up to the election of Lincoln. So check your notes. Make sure you understand the Compromise of 1850, what happened in Bleeding Kansas as a result of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and then the establishment of the Republican Party. See you next time. Greetings, History 141 students. Dr. Fia here with the Founding Fathers and Megan Piette, our producers behind the screen. Good afternoon, History 141 students. Professor Fia here, the Founding Fathers here, Megan Piette, as usual, producer behind the camera. We are now starting to wrap things up here in our class on United States History to 1865. We have three lectures left. The lecture that we gave on, that I gave last time, or the last, cut it. Good afternoon, History 141 students. John Fia here, along with the Founding Fathers, and of course Megan Piette behind the camera as our producer. You don't know what...
Oh my God!